Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the political situation. We're also seeing the PTI hold its march in solidarity with Shahbaz Gill and the arrest. Of course, we've also seen pictures that have been released by the Minister of Information showing Shahbaz Gill sahab quite well in the pictures. Of course, we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the rally pursuant to his arrest and detention. We'll also be talking about overall PTI's difficulties vis-a-vis the other two important cases, one being the Tosha Khana case and the other being the foreign funding case, to which we've seen a reaction come from the PTI leadership. Of course, the FIA's involvement, their refusal to become a part of that investigation. Of course, generally there's a lot being said against the institutions again, about whether there is a trust deficit there, whether there is there is a general. We've seen comments come out from PTI as far as institutions. The government, of course, has also said that they will be, if there's any proof as far as Shahbaz Gill Saab's condition is concerned, if there's any evidence that should come forward. We've also had the police, Islamabad police, say that if anything is being said as to his condition, assertions are being made as to torture of any kind, there should be evidence that should be tendered, and they've categorically refused that any of that those unfortunate events that have been alluded to happened. We'll be talking about all of that today. I have with me Barrister Yasir Latif Hamdani. Thank you so much for being with us. We also have with us Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who is a political analyst. Thank you for being with us. Yasir, I don't want to talk too much about whether there is torture, whether there is abuse per se, because I think prima facie we can all agree that if there is any of that torture, any abuse, then evidence should come forward. And of course, in the absence of that evidence, we've had the government categorically refuse. We've had the police, of course, you must have seen, also say that none of those events took place. They've also released some footage. But overall, as far as this incident is concerned, how do you look at the situation, the way that it's fueling, the way that the reactions come from PTI, the way the rally is held? What is your overall feeling about it?
I think one thing is absolutely clear. If there is, first of all, let me just say, if there is torture, then it should be condemned. It should be condemned by whoever, whatever, because that has no place.
There's no two opinions on that.
That's,
I think. Yes.
It has no place in a democracy, in a constitutional democracy. However, I personally question the veracity of the claims made, and some of that has to do with the fact that there has been a medical board, and that's. But I'll tell you, I feel that PTI, again, PTI hasn't really been, is more interested in playing it up as an issue so that they can later on create a distance between what Shahbaz Gill would confess to.
Okay.
But that's at least what I feel. I think it's part of a political strategy.
Okay.
So and they're using it. I mean, it's in their favor right now. The very idea that a person could be picked up and then tortured, they've actually convinced, the narrative is selling right now like hotcakes.
You're saying that, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Niaz. Dr. Niaz, what Barrister Yasir Latif Hamdani is saying, as I understand, is that there is, perhaps some fear as to things that could be said later on or could come out pursuant to this investigation, because of which Shahbaz Gill Saab is being detained, which will then become, controversial. Do you agree with that?
Well, first of all, I'd like to comment on, the overall issue, which is whether, it's justified for the government to follow up with a sedition case based on what he had said in that interview on a TV channel. And I personally think that, I think it's going a bit too far to legalize it and try to punish him for that. I mean, politically, it was a bad statement and he should be roundly condemned. Word should be sent to him through, proper channels, to his party, to restrain him from saying so. But to go to such an extent, sedition is a very serious case, and it's based on a colonial era rule, which is hardly used in advanced democracies now. So my first point would be for the government to seriously consider withdrawing the case completely. Then the other thing is about all this going back and forth of what's happened to it. Of course, torture is wrong and it should not happen in any country at all. And but so far, I haven't seen conclusive evidence that there has been torture. PTI is making a claim, but then PTI also makes a lot of claims that don't turn out to be true later on. So what is really needed is a proper investigation, and I think the Islamabad High Court has ordered that to happen on Monday. So hopefully, that will be the conclusive piece of evidence we are still waiting for. But so far, there have been one or two medical examinations. They haven't mentioned it in their reports. Maybe that wasn't part of their TORs. Then there is also the fact that he was in, the Punjab government jurisdiction for 3 or 4 years, and if he was tortured, it must have been before that. So why didn't
but as far as we've had Fawad Chaudhry Saab say that they should make an independent commission who should then look, and none of those, I think the people that he suggested, the 3 members that he suggested, none of them are from PTI. Does that normally happen? I want to go into that. What is the legality of it in this case? Let me come back to you. Yasir, does that normally happen in cases like this? Is it something that would be special in this case if such a commission was to be made of these political people that Fawad Chaudhry Saab is talking about? Is it a normal?
I haven't heard of this happening before.
Okay.
But let me get back to the earlier question of
sedition.
Sedition, right? This is not a question of sedition simpliciter.
Okay.
I think that it is a colonial era law which needs to go at some point, the sedition law. However, the issue with what Mr. Shahbaz Gill said was that he actually asked for, he incited people, incited members of the armed forces to mutiny. And that's a very important legal distinction.
Okay.
The reason is that what he said, he said, look, you're a Muslim, you are a follower of Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and that you live in a country that was founded by Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, therefore you should rebel. I mean, if you look at the language, it is pretty clear. You should rebel against your officers. I mean, that's what he is saying. Why? Because that particular, they're not intervening in favor of the PTI. So that is the important distinction that I think, and I would say that in any country for that matter, inciting mutiny is an offence.
Okay.
So I definitely, I think, the case is fair. Obviously, any means beyond constitutional and legal means should be avoided.
So while you're saying this law of sedition in this case is archaic, this is a different scenario in your opinion?
Yes.
This is a different case in point with
yes.
What has happened in Shahbaz Gill Saab's
Exactly.
case. I want to come to that. I also want to talk about whether, as far as, like you are saying, let me go to Niyaz Saab. Niyaz Saab, what happened in Shahbaz Gill Saab's case? Whether, he incited mutiny, this case you're saying it should be withdrawn. We've seen Imran Khan Saab say that, there is this neutrals. When we talk about neutrals, there is on one hand, the neutrals are supposed to be neutral, and then on the other hand, you feel that there is this constant, pulling that seems to be happening, that those neutrals should then intervene also. Do you agree with that, you think, or is it when you read the situation overall? Because this debate, when we talk about PTI, when we talk about the political party scenario, the narrative of PTI seems to hinge mostly on neutrals, and their role now, and whether it should be neutral at all, or whether, can you give your comments on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, the other strange thing. If you look at, other parties, they've also criticized the so-called neutrals in the past, but, their criticism was to stay away from politics. Whereas, what PTI PTI is saying is the exact opposite. They're inviting them to come into politics, and that too on behalf of PTI. So it's again, very unfortunate, a narrative that PTI is spreading. But then again, it should be condemned politically. I wouldn't go about, trying to, legalize the issue and, start cases about it. And even Mr. Shahbaz Gill, what he said was, don't follow illegal orders, which is even mentioned in, the Azhar Khan famous case. That judgment also says
I
the
want
thing.
to
So
come
I
to
think,
that. Yes, that's very
yeah.
important. I think that that's a very important point, and I will go to Yasir on that, and the relevance of the Asghar Khan case and whether that relates to what remarks that were made by Shahbaz Gill Sahab, because that is also one of the things that is being said. But I want to go to Senator Afnanullah Khan from the PMLN. Ji, Senator Sahab, as far as if you've been following, I don't know, but we are seeing a lot of polarization. We are also seeing a lot of bad blood, so to speak, between political parties, between PDM and the PTI. Shahbaz Gill Saab's case is one such case in point, which is fueling that bad blood, if you'll agree with me. And we are also seeing the Prime Minister again and again beckon the PTI leadership and say that the opposition should play a role in overall, in in the economy, in sitting down and having a dialogue. In this kind of a scenario, it seems highly unlikely that that would happen. Don't you think it's better, because with the government in Punjab being largely, of course, we are seeing under Parvez Elahi Saab's leadership, and of course largely being PTI with the federal government here, isn't it better to reduce that bad blood? Isn't it better to have some sort of a working relationship?
I agree with you from the point of view that it is best to evolve a working relationship between the government and the opposition. But unfortunately, ever since the inception of Imran Khan in Pakistani politics and the rise of PTI ever since 2011, they have played a negative role in Pakistani politics. They have abused the opposition or whoever is opposing them. They have used their social media brigade to hurl abuses at their opponents, and this has been a constant kind of a strategy coming from Bani Gala and Imran Khan himself. And Mr. Shahbaz Gill was among the most vocal persons who basically adopted this policy. And then we saw the abuse that he hurled at different people, especially some even female opponents, female political opponents. So this is like a constant thing that has been happening from Imran Khan and PDI. So if they need to stop this, then they need to take a back foot, and they need to come to a place where they can talk to their opponents. This whole strategy of maligning the opponents is not a good strategy for PTI and for Pakistan. So and we have not once but many times tried to build a bridge between us and PTI, but every time it has not taken up properly by the leadership, and they thought that it is a sign of our weakness or something. So I mean, it is something that it is not a good picture to be seen. But even if you look at the 90s and prior to that, I mean, there has been a lot of animosity between PMLN and the two parties. But there was always a dialogue that was happening between the two parties. Unfortunately, ever since the inception of PTI, I mean, this has become a big problem for the Pakistani political scene. They genuinely believe that if they hurl abuse at their opponents, it's a good strategy. And if you look at even social media of PTI, it's like a constant brigade of their social media people hurling abuse at their opponents. So it is something that has been going on for a very long time, and it's unfortunate. But this is how it is. I mean, we have tried to fix this problem a lot of the time, but I mean, you can't fix it. I mean, it's not a thing which we can fix. It has to be done at both sides. So unless Imran Khan and PTI understand this problem, I don't think we can find a solution to this.
Do you think there's a chance that this case, the Shahbaz Gill Saab's case, can be withdrawn, or the government can perhaps extend itself, or perhaps use some tactics to diffuse the situation there at all? Or do you think that, of course, there's one argument that the law must take its course?
I think the law must take its course because um, uh, this has been going on for a very long time, and people have tried to fix this problem through different means, and it hasn't been. They haven't gotten anywhere. So I would rather, get this problem resolved through the legal way, because if you see, ever since what has happened with Shahbaz Gill, the rest of the PTI leadership have taken a back step. Prior to this, they were like going wild. Look at Fawad Chaudhry and the rest of the crew. They were doing all these sort of abuses, but now all of them have suddenly taken a back step, and sometimes this is the solution to the problem. Then that unless there is consequences to what they are going to do, they will keep on doing it. So now they are facing the consequences, so which I believe that will eventually lead to a more mature political scene in Pakistan.
Let me come back to you, Senator Sahab. I'm going to go to Abdullah Mumtaz Kaloon with the PTI. Abdullah, the rally that's happening today to show solidarity with Shahbaz Gill Sahab, as I understand, you are also, generally speaking, I asked Senator Afnan this also from the PMLN, but we are, if looking at overall the situation as an observer, we are seeing Punjab where, we've also had officers who acted against, I think, PTI members, as I understand, on the 25th. Action has been taken against those. We are also seeing, this kind of rally, the rally that's happening to show solidarity with Shahbaz Gill Sahab, and him, and the optics of that generally. Overall, the situation between the federal government now and Punjab, between the PTI and the PDM generally, do you think that this situation can blow up? Isn't there a chance that perhaps there can be some sort of a standoff, some sort of a working relationship where we can see things move on and move forward, rather than this kind of we are at this time seeing a potentially a situation that can actually blow up at any time for all political parties. It would be better to have that, no?
MAHRUKH, thank you for inviting me on your show. I would like to firstly state that the Dr. Shahbaz Gill's case is a test case for civil liberties and human rights in Pakistan. A man of Dr. Shahbaz Gill's stature is arrested at gunpoint from his car. He's manhandled into another car, taken away, and then there we see he's held incommunicado without a lawyer for more than 72 hours. Images that the whole Pakistani nation saw yesterday, the grotesque images of a man gasping for air in our courts. What does it tell about Pakistan? Are we Myanmar? Are we Libya? Or are we Yemen? Last time I checked, we were living in a civilized nation. This is a clear case where a man has been subjected to inhumane and degrading treatment. Even Raja Farooq Ali Khan, the civil judge yesterday, was flabbergasted. He told the prosecution, I want this man, Dr. Shahbaz Gill, to be taken away and have a second opinion from the doctors. And I've heard the commentary by Barrister Jameel Hamdani Saab. He says that there is a medical board in place. We saw the medical boards that were in place in the Sharjeel Memon case when a sitting Chief Justice went into his room and checked the bottle and later found out the bottle was honey and not something else. There was a medical board that sat with Mian Nawaz Sharif's case as well. So everyone in Pakistan knows how medical board reports are managed. This is a case of any Pakistani. MAHRUKH, I have to finish. Please, this is a very important point. Civil liberties in Pakistan, the haunting aspect of it is if this can happen to Shahbaz Gill, it can happen to any of us. It can happen to Niaz Murza Saab, it can happen to you, it can happen to Hamdani Saab, it can happen to Senator Irfan Saab, any of us. And I am chilled to the spine by the fact that on the 25th of May, overnight we saw people dressed in plain clothes jumping into our houses in the middle of the night. I mean, where are we living? Is this Pakistan or are we in Yemen? I would like to say Pakistan, human rights and civil liberties are enshrined in our constitution.
But
We need to
Abdullah,
do
when you talk about the medical board, like you are saying, when you talk about, you question, let me come back to you, Yasser, when you question the medical board, like Abdullah is saying, and I'll let him answer later, but overall, when you say the credibility of the medical board is in question, when you say the credibility of the courts are in question, when you say the credibility of, the government is in question, institutions are generally in question, then where do you go? And
It's
do you ultimately then shift all the power to the streets only? How do you then work the system? That's my question, because we can sit here and say that the medical board is also under it's controversial. Everything is controversial in this country. So then how are things being run at all for years? And when are we going to stop doing that? That's my question.
That's post-truth world for you. We've had that longer than the US had it with Trump.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and I know some PTI walas don't appreciate the comparison, but the Trumpistas, as it were, are very similar to our friends in the PTI. They would just deny and say everything is fake news.
Because my question is, I don't, let's leave Shahbaz Gill Sahab for 1 second. Let's talk about the fact that the PTI is refusing to be in the parliament because they're saying that it's not a legit parliament. But then they are in parliament in Punjab, which as I understand Imran Khan Sahab has said was only because he wanted Hamza out, okay? For whatever reason, their cabinet is very much a PTI cabinet. They are there, they are in KP also. So the only problem they seem to be having, and I'll go to Abdullah with this later also, is with apparently the federal government, which the federal parliament, the overall National Assembly of Pakistan, which they feel is not something they want to, what would one say, acknowledge, and they say that it's not right. Then that part of that problem is the FIA, the government, they say that that's also, it's controversial. They don't want to become part of that investigation because it's not acceptable to them. So then by that same logic, if the courts are also going to hold something, or election commission, we've already seen them say that they don't accept, and that's categorically a no. So then all institutions, they're not going to be part of, they're just going to go on the streets. So Abdullah, can you answer this, please? I'll come back to you.
I can answer in a very appropriate manner. Let's talk about the election commissioner. I'm from Sargodha. Sikandar Sultan Raja Sahab is from Tehsil Kot Momin. It has come to my ears that one of his nephews is planning to run from a newly crafted political constituency for MPA on a PMLN ticket in the next coming election, the general election. We all know Sikandar Sultan Raja Sahab is Sayyid Mehdi Sahab's son-in-law, and we all know how devoted Mehdi Sahab was to Mian Nawaz Sharif.
To be fair, I know that you're a reasonable person, so I'm going to ask you this. Maybe to someone less reasonable, I wouldn't put it. But to be fair, if we were to investigate, you or me or Yasser or anybody, and our relationships with people, we would probably find people from all political parties. Let's be honest. That doesn't by itself discredit a person or doesn't make them controversial by nature. So I mean that itself is not enough to say that he's and also the fact that we've also had the PTI say that because the cases have been overturned in court, then that shows that there is some malafide from the election commission. Cases are overturned every day in this country. When you go to high court, when you go to superior courts, Supreme Court, that doesn't mean that there was necessarily somebody biased. There can be a host of reasons.
MAHRUKH, I am privy to information from one of my friends who worked inside the Election Commission of Pakistan's office with the Chief Election Commissioner, and he himself told me how Ashtar Asaf Ali, the sitting Attorney General of Pakistan, used to draft orders on behalf of Sikandar Sultan Raja, would then be disseminated in the last 3 months. So I don't want to divulge all this on national TV, but all I will say is I agree with you. I take the force of your point. However, in this case, you're coming back to your original question, what should be done? Fawad Chaudhry Saab today has given an excellent solution. Let's have an all-party commission consisting of representatives from all the parties. They sit together and discuss and investigate whether torture or inhumane degrading treatment was meted out to Dr. Shahbaz Gill or not. Coming back to the other institutions, like I said, Parliament is the most supreme institution in Pakistan, but at present we have a rump parliament, a parliament that the legitimacy of it has been is in question, and the perfect solution for that would be national elections. I would have expected elections to have happen anytime soon, but they haven't happened for some reason. I mean, we've seen the PDM for the past 4 years, 3.5 years, they've been saying we want elections, we want elections. Even Maulana Fazl Rahman Saab wanted elections, but when the elections were given to him on a silver platter, they said, no, sorry, we want to govern. And the governance they've done is a car crash governance you've seen for the past 120 days where Pakistan is. I mean, we are on the verge of an economic meltdown. Clearly, they had no economic plan. The basic commodity prices are touching the sky. The average Pakistani on the street is suffering. Please call for elections. That's the call on the street.
Let me come back to you. I don't know if Senator Afnan is with us or not, but I'll go to Dr. Niyaz. Niyaz, overall, if you've been following, overall, where do you think the debate lands as far as institutions are concerned? Where do you think, leaving this case particularly aside, then again, there is this whole debate about the fact that, whether a normal person with the same charges would have that kind of commission appointed or not. There is that whole debate that we will then land into. But do you think that overall, as far as institutions are concerned, we have seen, a categorical no as far as acceptance from the PTI is concerned on any institution? And I think you heard Abdullah when we were talking about the election commissioner also.
Yes, that's the unfortunate part, that no institution is seen as neutral and reliable now, and that leaves us with very poor options. So I was listening to the suggestion by Mr. Fawad Chaudhry. Well, I mean, of course it's going to be neutral, but to investigate torture, you need medical doctors. It can't be done by ordinary people. So if the PTI doesn't trust
the doctors are compromised.
So if PTI doesn't, trust PIMS doctors, what it can suggest is a panel which includes 1 or 2 doctors from PIMS and then 1 or 2 from Shaukat Khanam, so that it has somebody that it can trust on the board. But having politicians on a panel to investigate torture doesn't mean anything. The other issue is about the ECP. From what I have seen, I haven't seen any evidence of bias coming from ECP. In fact, what I have seen is that PTI has benefited enormously from a wrong decision that was given by ECP on the application of the 25 MPAs who were disqualified by the ECP from the Punjab Assembly. Because as the later Supreme Court decision showed, the letter of the party head doesn't count, and that's what had been given in the case of the 25 MPs. So, PTI should be very, very thankful to the Election Commission of Pakistan instead of making these charges. So I think everybody needs to step back. It's very easy to start questioning everybody's, integrity for your own political gains. But I think it really destroys the institutional base in Pakistan, which is going to hurt everybody in Pakistan, including all the politicians and the people of Pakistan.
Let me come back to you. Ji, Yasir, I want to talk about the similarity with the Asghar Khan case. Can you tell us a little bit about that as far as this issue is concerned? Was sedition an issue there? What was the main issue?
No, actually, that's okay. So let's talk about the question really. Illegal orders by a superior officer given to a soldier or a any soldier of a force. The thing is that such an order would not be obeyed if it is against the constitution. If it is clearly against the constitution, that's where the conscience comes in. So that's not what Shahbaz Gill was saying.
Okay.
What
So
PTI and Shahbaz Gill have been saying, and I've heard that clip again and again, is that they need to intervene, that the soldiers and people and officers of the lower ranks need to intervene and essentially do what their leadership isn't doing. So that's what I got out of it.
Because we've seen, I mean, even if you leave the Shahbaz Gill case aside, we've seen as far as criticism is concerned. Now, when you look at overall the political landscape, and this is across the board, criticism on institutions is something that has been taken quite well by institutions generally, because it's been happening and we haven't seen any reaction overall. So one can't really say that there has been an overreaction to criticizing overall any institutions. Would you agree with me on that?
Well, I think there's been a lot of
They've shown a fair restraint. Yes, that's what
a
I'm
lot
going
of
to talk
restraint,
about.
yes, this time around, and let's hope that's how it remains, because we don't want the institutions getting involved.
Because but what happens, Abdullah, why do we always have this war of institutions? Because every conversation that Imran Khan Sahab has, every time he addresses people, he talks about institutions, he talks about neutrals. It seems to be something more important than elections. It seems to be, he says that neutrals be neutrals, but then he talks about an intervention. So that itself is a contradiction in terms. Why is that contradiction in there? Could you try and explain that, please?
MAHRUKH, I can explain very well. We just need to look into our past. I mean, we've heard slogans like "Vote ko izzat do." We've heard slogans given by people and leaders where they name call different generals in the army, and in Jalsa we saw the different bianiyas by narratives being given by Ayaz Sadiq, Khwaja Asif Sahib, Maryam Nawaz, Maulana Fazlur Rahman, Mian Nawaz Sharif, all of them, if you can put them all together, there is a compound case of sedition. But was anything undertaken against them? Nothing. I don't condone, for the record here, PTI, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, does not condone what Shahbaz Gill said on TV. Our position is that those were his own words, his own peace of mind, and he expressed it in that manner. No, at no way did he have any dictation from anyone to utter those words on TV.
So basically, as I understand, the PTI, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and your leadership, and Imran Khan Sahab, and all of you say basically that you don't agree at all with what Shahbaz Gill Sahab has said. You don't agree. Those were his own words.
They were his words.
He said them unilaterally, under under no influence of any kind, and that legal proceedings should proceed, but nothing illegal should be done. So the question really is whether anything illegal has been done at all, which is what the issue is, right? That's what I understand.
Exactly. And the commission that I'm suggesting, it could have doctors, which Niaz Murza have said, from all the different medical boards, not just from PIMS. You could have from Shaukat Khanam, from the different hospitals, even from the CMH. Try to get to the bottom of it. It is a test case for civil liberties in Pakistan. We are a civilized nation. We pride ourselves over that. And if it can happen to Shahbaz Gill, it can happen to any of us. I would reiterate that, yes.
But the two cases are not entirely similar. But we've also seen, Abdullah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we've also seen what happened as far as the officers who carried out orders, on the 25th. Action has also been taken against them. So do you think that, this is happening as far as, different parties are taking? Would you say that what the Punjab government has done there also? Because they were acting under somebody's orders, right, with whatever happened that day. And they, according to the police, they maintained that what they did was legal. So for the action to be taken there also is questionable. In your opinion, should it have been done at all?
MAHRUKH, our Prime Minister Imran Khan, now he's chairman right now, his narrative, his mission has always been for a depoliticized police in Pakistan. We saw it happening in KPK, and there it's been a resounding success. It can happen in Punjab as well. Have a depoliticized police where they're not taking orders from their political superiors.
The police when we are seeing, things like issues like him questioning the chief secretary's position, dictating who should be the chief secretary. Then we are seeing this, the federal government involved in that, the province suggesting that names should be changed.
I'll tell you why he was questioning the chief secretary. What the chief secretary at that time did in the floor of the House of the Punjab Assembly was worth watching. For the first time in the history of Pakistan, did the police force enter the premises, the floor of the House of the Punjab Assembly. It reminds me of when King Charles I took soldiers to arrest Speaker John Halsall in the House of Commons. I mean, what kind of country, again I reiterate, are we a country of respectable people, or are we a country where hooliganism, brute force is invited? what type of message are we leaving for our children here? I mean,
But
Chief
we are-
Secretary
but-
Saab, and then Chief Secretary, when Pervez Saab came into power, when he won the election, the Chief Secretary himself, he resigned, he asked for a transfer on his own
Abdullah,
volition.
is vote of no confidence, generally speaking, a yes or no, a legal way to remove a prime minister, yes or no?
In this case, a vote of confidence without any interference from outside or inside, any interference, it is the legitimate way to remove a government. But when there is a stock exchange being set up in the grounds of Islamabad, Sindh House, and money is being exchanged hand, there's an inflow of dollars.
Which, by the way, has not been proven at all.
Then the vote of no confidence, it takes a suspect motion. However, in this case, like I said, I invite all parties, let's join hands, come to elections, call elections, fresh elections. Let the Awam, the Pakistan people, decide their future. Who are we to decide?
But Abdullah, let me go to Niyaz Saab. Niyaz Saab, what's the guarantee that if we have the elections today, and Tehreek-e-Insaf does not do as well as they expect to at this time, do you think that they will accept the results? Please tell me, as an observer, as an independent political analyst, do you think they will? What's the guarantee that they will not take to the streets again?
Well, that is the thing, and I think Mr. Abdullah should, answer that. But personally, I feel there would be a very high chance that, if PTI loses, and I am not saying that it will lose, it's, seems to be fairly popular right now. But if it does lose, then, it may not accept it, especially since it's the same neutrals at the top, which PTI doesn't trust.
Are we going to again have a debate about whether the neutrals were neutral or not? Are we again going to have a debate whether the election commission was in fact independent or not? Are we again going to have a debate about the fact that, whether, they had electables, whether what happened on the ground, whether voting was allowed? Are we again going to be in this kind of a crisis that we are in today?
It's quite possible. They don't trust the election commission, they don't trust the neutrals, they don't trust, of course, this government. So it's quite possible, and then you could have a hung government. That's also quite possible. And then you'll be back to square one, then just fighting.
And then you will be looking for allies again, and then you will be looking at excuses for performance, which we had earlier also. Ji Abdullah.
MAHRUKH, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf trusts the people of Pakistan. We trusted the people of Pakistan on the 17th of July, and they returned us back into the Punjab Assembly. We trust them wholly and completely. What we don't trust is the Selection Commission of Pakistan,
which is currently when they vote in your favor?
Maybe we should ask that to Maryam Nawaz, who propagated the slogan "Vote ko izzat do." Did she trust the elections? When the elections are called, if there is inappropriate practices, attempts to rig the election, of which there may or may not be evidence at that time, I cannot comment in the future, but every election is different. But as Niyaz Saab has said, I second him, I echo his sentiment. PTI seems to be the most popular party in Pakistan. Imran Khan Saab is the most popular leader in Pakistan right now. He's
Abdullah,
the only one facing a cabal of 13 parties.
Okay, I just have one question from you.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is a chance, and I'm saying that there's a chance, considering whatever the political situation is today, for the PTI to lose the next general elections at all? Let's talk about a chance. I mean, we have to, in Europe.
Yeah. I mean, if the recent by-elections can be taken as a modeling on that, where we had Hamza Shahbaz and the whole provincial setup, the whole provincial machinery was in the PMLN's hands. Taking that into perspective, the chances are, and PTI still managed to secure 15 or 16 seats in that election. I mean, on the basis of that,
there are chances. But you agree that there are chances,
that the chances are
like there are for any party.
They're very slim. They're very slim. I mean, if what happens is like it happened in 1977, where PNA managed to win only 5 seats despite their popularity against People's Party at that time, then obviously they will be rigging. But we'll cross that bridge.
So you're saying that if they were to lose, there would be rigging then?
Well, I said we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I mean, I can't comment in the future.
Fair enough, Abdullah. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Thank you for your patience. Yasir, thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Niaz Murtaza, thank you for being with us. Overall, we have to as far as there has to be some rational thought that has to prevail overall in the political scenario at this time, that does not lead to the kind of polarization we are seeing in society, that does not lead to the kind of venom that is generally seen on screens, on televisions all over Pakistan. We have to come to some sort of agreement where there has to be some respect of institutions, where there has to be some respect of the political process, for the political process to continue. If there is no respect for that political process, and it is always under scrutiny and always controversial, then that political process cannot continue. And that is something, a food for thought for across the board all political parties, particularly so for the PTI at this time. And I hope that better sense will prevail. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.